miseries so clearly that it thinks that, as its director observes not that which it sees and feels, he is speaking in this manner because he understands it not. And so, instead of comfort, it rather receives fresh affliction, since it believes that its director's advice contained no remedy for its troubles. And in truth this is so, for until the Lord shall have completely purged it after the manner that he wills, no means or remedy is of any service or profit for the relief of its affliction. The more so because the soul is as powerless in this case as one who has been imprisoned in a dark dungeon, and is bound hand and foot, and can neither move nor see nor feel any favor, whether from above or from below, until the spirit is humbled, softened, and purified, and grows so keen and delicate and pure that it can become one with the Spirit of God, according to the degree of union of love which his mercy is pleased to grant it. In proportion to this, the purgation is of greater or less severity, and of greater or less duration. But if it is to be really effectual, it will last for some years, however severe it be, since the purgative process allows intervals of relief wherein, by the dispensation of God, this dark contemplation ceases to assail the soul in the form and manner of purgation, and assails it after an illuminative and loving manner, wherein the soul, like one that has gone forth from this dungeon and imprisonment, and is brought into the recreation of spaciousness and liberty, feels and experiences great sweetness of peace and loving friendship with God, together with a ready abundance of spiritual communication. This is to the soul a sign of the health which is being wrought within it by the said purgation, and a foretaste of the abundance for which it hopes. Occasionally this is so great that the soul believes its trials to be at last over. For spiritual things in the soul, when they are most purely spiritual, have this characteristic, that if trials come to it, the soul believes that it will never escape from them, and that all its blessings are now over, as has been seen in the passages quoted. And if spiritual blessings come, the soul believes in the same way that its troubles are now over, and that blessings will never fail it. This was so with David when he found himself in the midst of them, as he confesses in these words, "I had said in my abundance, I shall never be moved." This happens because the actual possession by the Spirit of one or two contrary things itself makes impossible the actual possession and realization of the other contrary thing. This is not so, however, in the sensual part of the soul, because its apprehension is weak. But as the spirit is not yet completely purged and cleansed from the affections that it has contracted from its lower part, while changing not in so far as it is spirit, it can be moved to further afflictions in so far as these affections sway it. In this way, as we see, David was afterwards moved, and experienced many ills and afflictions, although in the time of his abundance he had thought and said that he would never be moved. Just so is it with the soul in this condition, when it sees itself moved by that abundance of spiritual blessings, and being unable to see the root of the imperfection and impurity which still remain within it, thinks that its trials are over. This thought, however, comes to the soul but seldom, for until spiritual purification is complete and perfected, the sweet communication is very rarely so abundant as to conceal from the soul the root which remains hidden, in such a way that the soul can cease to feel that there is something that it lacks within itself, or that it has still to do. Thus it cannot completely enjoy that relief, but feels as if one of its enemies were within it. And although this enemy is, as it were, hushed and asleep, it fears that he will come to life again and attack it. And this is what indeed happens, for when the soul is most secure and least alert, it is dragged down and immersed again in another and a worse degree of affliction, which is severer and darker and more grievous than that which is past. And this new affliction will continue for a further period of time, perhaps longer than the first. And the soul once more comes to believe that all its blessings are over forever. Although it had thought during its first trial that there were no more afflictions which it could suffer, and yet, after the trial was over, it enjoyed great blessings, this experience is not sufficient to take away its belief, during this second degree of trial, that all is now over for it, and that it will never again be as happy as in the past. For, as I say, this belief, of which the soul is so sure, is caused in it by the actual apprehension of the spirit, which annihilates within it all that is contrary to it. This is the reason why those who lie in purgatory suffer great misgivings as to whether they will ever go forth from it, and whether their pains will ever be over. For although they have the habit of the 3 theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity, the present realization which they have of their afflictions and of their deprivation of God allows them not to enjoy the present blessing and consolation of these virtues. For although they are able to realize that they have a great love for God,